Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial, and today we've gotten the opportunity to explore the engineering main spaces of SS United States, one of the fastest large ships ever built. In fact, United States still holds the blue riband she first won in 1952 for being the fastest passenger liner to cross the Atlantic, and she earned it in both directions. So now we're looking at the engineering plant of this remarkable ship. SS United States was built between 1950 and 1951 in Newport News, Virginia. So her engineering plant is a natural evolution from the large capital ships of World War II, such as the Iowa-class battleships. In fact, we just found a plaque on one of these boilers that says it is a Babcock & Wilcox Iowa-type boiler. I'm not sure that Babcock & Wilcox has any plant in the state of Iowa, so that would imply that it is like the Iowa-class battleships have, although these boilers are extremely different. We're looking now at where the burners are installed here. So this is the fire side of your boiler. And I'm not going to crawl inside this one, but you can see from this picture the opening that leads into the firebox of one of these boilers, and you can even see some of the fire bricks in there. And here is a cool example of one of the ship's original fire bricks used for the boiler. These burner systems are very similar to the ones on New Jersey, although there's a different number of them. Here we've got 10 on the wall, whereas New Jersey only has 9, and they're more mounted side by side than in this whole elevated position. Also, the burners themselves are significantly larger. Look, this is 3 times as long as the one for an Iowa-class battleship. But these nozzles get inserted through the port here, cranked down just like the ones on New Jersey. You could very easily take an engineman from an Iowa-class battleship and put them in here, and he would have an idea of what he was doing. One major difference is, whereas the Iowa-class battleships are making 600-pound steam, post-war advancements, particularly when we captured German super high-pressure steam turbine equipment during World War II, led to the development of first 1,000-pound steam and eventually 1,200-pound steam on later ships. So SS United States was designed to use 1,000-pound steam, although often this pressure was kept around 925 pounds. So still 50% greater PSI than on an Iowa-class battleship. Another major change between the two vessels is Iowa-class battleships designed to be warships are significantly more subdivided. So each engine and each fire room has its own separate engineering main space for 8 total. SS United States only has half that much compartmentalization. Each fire room has 4 boilers in it. So we've got the one here. We've got another one on the forward side of the room just opposite me. There's maybe 8 feet of space between the two, or just over 1.2 curators of space. And then on the other side of the room, there are 2 more. Again, one forward and aft port, one forward and aft starboard. These are then feeding 2 engines over in the engine room. Again, while not as subdivided as an actual warship, much of the cost, about 2/3 of the cost of United States, was paid for by the federal government so that the ship could be taken over in wartime to be used as a transport. So there is watertight subdivision, both for the safety of the crew and for military purposes. And here you can see one of these watertight doors. Normally, they would function via a motor. You can just push a button and it'll shut the door. But much like our door on the armored conning tower, there is also a manual backup that you can use to slowly crank the door shut. You can see that the metal plate here rises up as part of this process as the door slides over, and it's just got some gearing here that allows it to do that. On Iowa-class battleships, the engineering main spaces are each their own separate box, which are only accessible from Broadway above. There is no way between them until the museum cut a door. On SS United States, the main spaces are connected by watertight doors like this. So while they can be subdivided during normal operation, the engineering crew can still move between the various spaces freely. You can also close those doors, remember, by the push button from outside the engine room. So the civilians operating the ship don't have to sacrifice themselves as the ship is going down, like much of Titanic's Black Gang did. So now that we've come through the watertight door, we are in the after engine room. So this has engines 2 and 3, the inboard starboard and inboard port engine. This is the inboard port engine behind me, with that being forward, that direction being aft. The forward engine room has engines 1 and 4, the outboard starboard and the outboard port. So it's similar to Iowa-class battleships in that you've got your outboards and then your inboards. It's just instead of being in separate rooms, they're 2 each in each room. Over here, you can see the ship's throttle boards. Again, 1 per engine, and significantly more room at these throttle boards than the ones on Iowa-class battleships. In fact, more room in general in these spaces, which is amazing because the United States is just over 101 feet wide, so she's actually 7 feet narrower than an Iowa-class battleship. However, without all those torpedo defense layers on the outside of the ship, you end up with more interior volume. The most striking thing about these turbines compared to those on an Iowa-class battleship is all of the steam piping coming into them is bare metal. On any steamship in service, these would be wrapped in insulation because remember, the high pressure steam, it's 850 degrees on an Iowa-class battleship. It's probably close to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit on SS United States. So this pipe should be, all these pipes behind me should look almost twice as wide with insulation around them. The problem is, engineering spaces of a 1950s ship, much like on an Iowa-class battleship, that insulation is asbestos. So between 1993 and 1994, the SS United States was in Ukraine having her asbestos insulation removed as part of the ongoing process of redeveloping the ship to some other use. One really cool thing about the engineering plant is with all the insulation removed, the inspection ports removed, and you can actually look in and see some of the turbine blades. Unfortunately, none of the inspection ports on the reduction gears have been opened up. Just like on any other ship, you've got your high pressure and your low pressure turbine, and then they tie into a reduction gear. And honestly, this feels like a very similar sized reduction gear to what Iowa-class battleships have. Battleship New Jersey has 212,000 horsepower. SS United States, according to documents declassified in the late 70s, early 80s, was capable of 240,000 horsepower. So an order of magnitude even larger than Iowa-class battleships, and making her engineering plant the evolutionary gap between the World War II era capital ships like the Iowa-class and the supercarriers like Forrestal with 260,000 horsepower that come after. So you got the Iowas at 212,000, SS United States at 240, and then the Forrestals at 260, which are commissioned within a decade of SS United States. So you see this progression in power plant size, roughly separated the early 40s, the early 50s, and the late 50s, early 60s. So it shows you just how much more powerful these propulsion plants were getting over that time. Check this out. It's still got a lock on the inspection port. It's a little bit smaller than the ones on New Jersey, isn't it? There isn't much about this ship I'm able to say is smaller. Just give me this. One other awesome thing you can see in this space, Let's look straight up. We are actually underneath the after funnel. Makes sense, right? The engineering plant is being vented up into that funnel. There is a ladder well system and a system of fiddlies that'll get you up there. There's even an elevator that would get you up there back in the day. We're not going to try and ride that today. We are one level above the hold below us, and that shows you up to the top of the stacks, which would be 12 stories above the bottom of the ship, about 11 stories above where we are now. One thing that strikes me, I've lived in Philadelphia for over 5 years now. I have obviously been following this ship for most of my life as somebody who's interested in large ships. And all of the rumors I always heard about this is she's completely gutted in the inside. There's nothing to see. Well, obviously, we're not in a complete space like in an Iowa-class battleship that was put away to be used again in the near future. There are some things missing. There are some empty racks. There are some empty gauge slots. But this space is remarkably intact based on what I was expecting to see coming in here. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. What are some of the stories you've heard about the condition of this ship? And you can see that there's peeling paint. You can see that it's a little bit red-brown under there, but we're not seeing huge amounts of scale. We're not seeing water inside the ship. She is in way better shape than I was led to believe coming in here. So one of the plans right now, and remember plans are always subject to change, but one of the plans when the ship is eventually preserved would be to keep one of the engine rooms, probably this after one we're in now, as an interpreted space that visitors would be able to go in. So if you ever want to see this space, do whatever you can to help the SS United States Conservancy preserve this ship. The propellers on SS United States are very similar to an Iowa-class battleship, though not the same. They're roughly the same diameter, and it's the same as on an Iowa with 4-bladed propellers on the outside and 5-bladed on the inside. However, the pitch of the propellers are completely different. They were designed by the mathematician Elaine Kaplan, who was working as an engineer for Gibbs & Cox while SS United States was under construction. And so they've got a significantly different twist on them than the Iowa-class battleships. One interesting thing to look at is on the lower edge of these blades, you can see where they have been worn away a tremendous amount by the cavitation they experienced at high speed. It makes sense to set it back here on the fantail, since they've been removed for the ship to prevent dissimilar metal corrosion, because in wartime, SS United States was designed to be taken over by the US Navy, and so some parts of the exterior deck, like the fantail here, are specifically strengthened to take gun emplacements in wartime, which means that they can handle the couple tons of weight of a propeller. So now we're in one of the shaft alleys. I'm not sure if that's the right term for a civilian vessel like this. This is actually the propeller shaft coming from, number one propeller shaft coming from the starboard forward engine in the space between the forward engine room and the after fire room where we just were. But it's a really great view of the shafts of SS United States, and they appear to be roughly the same size as on an Iowa-class battleship in terms of the size of the bearings and the size of the shaft itself. I do not know what the RPM of these shafts are. On Iowa-class battleships, 202 is nominally your max RPM. We believe that they got the ship up to 206 RPM when she hit the 35.2 knots. So somewhere in that ballpark, a little bit higher, would make sense for SS United States, but off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you, and I do not have my reference book here with me during this exploration. So if this is a shaft alley, it is by far the most spacious one we've ever been in. What do you think? Have you guys ever been in shaft alleys before? Do you think this counts as that, even though we're not at the back of the ship? Let us know in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. Today we'd like to highlight the SS United States Conservancy that allowed us to come on board and film. There's a link in the description below to donate to them to help preserve this historic vessel and help turn her into a museum ship one day. Also linked in the description below is their various social medias, so you can keep up to date with the work that they're doing. You can support Battleship New Jersey by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about us and our channel. Thanks for watching.